VHS files contain spoilers, adult content, and harsh language. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. How can we help you?
How far is it to Camp Crystal Lake?
You're in luck. Tonight we're doing 5 for the price of 1, and we're taking you back to Camp Crystal Lake and talking Friday the 13th, parts 1 through 5.
We'll never come back again.
This is the VHS Files. Welcome back to the VHS Files. How is everybody doing tonight?
Great. Nice day.
How was everybody's week thus far? Has everybody been having a good week? Jenny?
Super busy. Very busy at work.
Jason?
Watching lots of movies for this week. Lots of movies.
Yes, watching a lot of movies. Watching 5 movies.
I think Eric got his hand down in the pot with something that was a little bit strenuous this week as far as the podcast go.
Well, we should be transparent here. I agreed to 1 movie a week, and our 4th episode is 5 movies.
But if you think about it, it's just really one long movie.
Well, yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah. So tonight we're talking Friday the 13th.
I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old-timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there.
Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed. It's got a death curse.
Some folks claim they've even seen him. Right in this area.
Who's that? Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
The girl who survived that night at Camp Blood, that Friday the 13th, she claims she saw him.
Boy, is he dead too?
We didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.
I, Josh, here at the VHS Files, turned 40 at the beginning of this week.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And one of the biggest movies of my childhood, one thing that led to why I love horror so much was the Friday the 13th series. And being that they are turning 40 this year as well as I was, we thought it would be a good idea to watch some Friday the 13th movies and comment on them. They're a big part of my childhood. I know they're a big part of Jason's childhood. Now, Jenny and Eric, I can't really say so much for. So I'm a Friday the 13th fanatic. I have a whole lot of collectibles. I watch the movies regularly. I've watched them so many times over the past 35 years, because I wasn't watching them when I was 1, obviously. But so I've watched them numerous times. My mom was watching them when she was younger. I was watching them with her again. Why I was watching them with my mother at that age, who knows? But they left an impression on me. They left a big impression on me, and I have a love for the character of Jason Voorhees. The movies, they are just ingrained in me as far as, you know, childhood memories and movies and why I love what I love. So Jason, I think you've got kind of a similar story. How about you?
Oh, just a little bit. I mean, even all the way back to our first episode when we were all introducing ourselves, I had mentioned probably the first horror movie I had ever seen was Friday the 13th Part 3, due to the fact that, you know, like you said, our parents would let us watch them maybe later, but that first movie was one of the ones where you snuck your head out of the bedroom when you're told you're not to, and you're catching glimpses of things on the TV, and then, of course, you go to bed all night, you think Jason standing in the corner of the room for the rest of the night. And I think from that point on, because of that, that's what, like you, Josh, it got me into the horror thing, because that sense of being scared. I mean, even as a kid, you know, we have our nightmares and we run to mom and dad, but it was also like an adrenaline rush we fed off of it. You're like, wow, I need some more of that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's from that point in, I sucked in, you know, for the rest of the Friday 13th series. It actually what led me over to my favorite series, which I believe we'll talk about later, is the Halloween movies. But I mean, my name is Jason, and I do love Jason movies. And I spent time with my mom and throughout my life watching these movies because she was a horror movie fanatic too. But
it's honestly it's kind of funny the genesis of our love for our specific horror movie maniacs is I love Jason. My name's Josh. Fun fact that I learned in watching all of this is originally his name was supposed to be Josh Voorhees, and they changed it to Jason for whatever reason.
And that's why we're together doing this.
Yeah, and
you both watched it with your mothers, and Jason loves his mother too.
There's something strange going on here.
Yep. And your story about watching Under the Covers and all of that stuff that's not the memory I have for Friday the 13th. It's actually another horror movie franchise that we'll eventually get to. So it's funny how this one is the biggest one in my brain, but it's not the one that left those sort of impressions on me. This one hooked me in, and it was fun to me. The character of Jason Voorhees, and I'll go ahead and say it now. This is the most fun franchise of the horror icons, in my opinion, and we can get into that later.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's more of the little more campy type feel. It's like the whole summer fun type thing going on vibe. It's not so much the seriousness of the ominous of like maybe Halloween and Hellraiser and stuff like that.
Right.
So I totally agree that, it's more of a fun, happy, these teenagers are having a great time, and then, life turns to shit for them. Well, their life ends, but.
And I hesitate to use the word the franchise is consistent, because watching these and where we're going to watch out, it's anything but consistent. It's just this series has something cohesive throughout it and I want to talk about that as well, but it has something that runs through the entire series that keeps them all grounded with one another, in my opinion. Yeah. So Eric, you have any kind of childhood memories of Friday the 13th? Or
my childhood memories of Friday the 13th aren't from watching them, because I haven't seen any of these until probably my 30s when you shared them with me. I associate...
This is going to be fun.
Come to the dark side. We have brownies.
I associate Jason and Friday the 13th so much with Halloween growing up. And, my entire life, you don't have a Halloween without seeing someone in a hockey mask at some point. I mean, it's just... It's become such a staple of Halloween as much as a witch or a ghost or anything. And I definitely have lots of memories there. But I don't have the boyhood memories. I don't know that I'd want to watch these with my mom after watching them. But yeah, I'm interested to get into it.
And the other newbie here at the show is my lovely wife, Jenny Lou.
Yeah, also, I did not have any childhood memories of Friday the 13th because I wasn't allowed to watch scary movies. And through that, probably because I wasn't allowed to, I didn't want to after that. Like, if there was a commercial for a horror movie, I would cover my eyes and run away. I was a pretty serious and terrified child because I was so sheltered. So, I just didn't want to watch horror movies for a very long time. And some horror movies I still don't want to watch. So
would you say that Josh has pulled you into the horror world was in a good way?
Yeah.
Or does he drag you kicking and screaming through these?
He knows my limits, and he will tell me if I am not going to like a movie. Yeah. He knows the things that bother me. Like some
little
things
talking dolls.
Like some things are fun and some things are gory, but then he knows the line for me. Yeah. So
Jenny can't watch the things that could absolutely 100% never happen to you in real life. That's the stuff that scares her to death. But anything that could potentially happen, like Jason could bust through the door and hack your face off with a machete, she's fine watching that.
have a very active imagination. Being an only child, I kind of had to have one. And so I can envision these scenarios more vividly, I think, than other people. And so that makes them more real to me. So I'm more terrified of them.
Right. You allow yourself to get
get it.
pulled in.
Yep.
Perhaps too far.
Yes.
Well, we're going to get into these movies because I don't think there's really much there as far as that goes. These movies do one thing, and that's leave nothing to your imagination. I mean, in some aspects, maybe, and we can talk about that, but these are as gratuitous as you can get in most cases. So this is definitely not a thinker as far as a series, and you know, it is slasher in any inkling of that word is not. You know, it's just, this is one of those movies that takes no brains to watch. You can just turn it on, enjoy it for what it is, or not enjoy it for what it is, depending.
You're basically just watching it because you know that there's going to be some those jump scares where you turn around and he's right there, or somebody's going to be falling out of a tree from a rope that he's set up after he'd already killed him 30 minutes earlier in the movie. And that's the exciting part. You know it's going to happen after you see just one of these movies throughout the rest of the series. So you know what to expect, but people watched them. I mean, these movies have made millions and millions of dollars at the box office, all of them.
Yep.
But it's the thing. It's the same formula every time.
Yeah.
It is, nothing's really going to really change. They did throw a couple little curveballs in there and some of them, but
I definitely
come back for that.
I definitely have some things to say about the curveballs they decided to throw as far as this goes. So first things first, it's 1980. The slasher craze is going nuts through Hollywood. You have films like Halloween and a few others that really struck a nerve and became an unlikely blockbuster at that time. So everybody jumped on the bandwagon and wanted to do something revolving around a holiday and all of this. So, Eric, take us back in time. Let's talk about what was going on around 1980.
We're sending you back in time.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Well, Josh, since we're covering 5 years this week, I'm going to give us a quick overview of the first half of the 80s. The decade starts with the U.S. hockey team defeating the Soviet Union in the Olympics at the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
Screw those Reds, am I right, guys?
Exactly. The Ruskies.
Then we are gifted the arcade classic Pac-Man. We got The Empire Strikes Back. We've got the debut of Post-it Notes. And our boy Josh here was brought into the world, buddy.
Yep, that was
that's the most important one.
Happy birthday. Then, unfortunately, we lose John Lennon. Not everything can be
sad.
Happy. But life goes on, and we get the debut of MS-DOS. We get Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we get MTV. And slowly, typewriters are being replaced by computers, something called personal computer. The first test tube baby is born, and then Jenny is born as well. Not related, of course. That's just, they came in.
Wait, was she a test tube baby?
Coincidence. The lace collar became popular around this time. So shout out to the notorious RBG. Much love there. And let's see here. We discovered AIDS. That's no fun. Then Thriller came out. E.T. hits theaters, and the youngest member of this podcast, myself, was born. Jason, sorry, bud, that's an older episode.
Yeah, we got to go further back in time for that one.
I was born when the original Star Wars came out, so I'll take that.
There you go. That's pretty cool. Then we get the debut of Mario Brothers, giant mobile phones. We get the first untethered spacewalk, and the Sally Ride becomes the first American woman in outer space. Because space is cool, and space was so cool back then.
Everybody was an astronaut.
And it's still cool. Technology also brings us new Coke. And finally, a young dude named Michael Jordan is named the NBA's Rookie of the Year and is never heard from again.
Who's this Michael Jordan you speak of?
I don't know.
Josh doesn't do sports ball.
Is he like LeBron James or something like that?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, okay.
I know who Michael Jordan is, damn it. Goat. Yeah, a lot going on in the first half of 80 as far as this goes. And we were gracious enough to be blessed with a Friday the 13th movie every year. But we'll start at the beginning with the very first one again, jumping on the train, horror movies with the holidays coinciding and whatnot, and Halloween made that a big deal. So director Sean S. Cunningham got together with his writing partner and decided they were going to do something, and he had this plan for Friday the 13th. He didn't know what the premise of it was going to be or anything like that, but he loved the fact of basing it off of the Friday the 13th stigma. So that's where that came from.
So you, two things. Yeah, I heard, I mean, that they came up with it as a reaction to Halloween.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like, it was literally like, they saw Halloween. It's like, let's do that.
Let's jump
with
on the train.
Let's do our take on that. Also, so Friday the 13th, what is the origins of that? I mean,
I didn't really get deep into it. I don't know how much of a big deal it was before the movie franchise, but I'm sure there was something that someone brought up regarding Friday and Friday the 13th of the month.
It was just that old thing of it was a very unlucky day. That's all.
Yeah,
it
with
really
with
was
13
throughout
and an
history.
unlucky number, like you're starting the weekend and it's the 13th day of the month, that kind of stuff, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't think there was really any big clasp to it. I think they were just reaching for something to jump on that bandwagon with Halloween and all of those. So
Yeah.
they got a cast together and shot this lowly movie. This movie was done with a budget of $550,000. And to be honest, I mean, they did what they could with that money, and it paid off because it made almost $60 million at the box office when
Wow.
it came out.
Yeah.
So, but as far as that
That's a
first
hell of a
movie goes, I
turnaround.
mean, this isn't going to be one of the traditional reviews you've heard us do so far because we are covering 5 movies in this time. You know, we do want to talk about some of the particular things throughout this first half of the franchise, but we're really going to go through these movies pretty quickly because, I mean, honestly, they do start to run together a little bit. And you've got basically this, like Jason was saying, the same MO going the whole time. But as far as the first movie goes, it has its moments. I do like that there's a whodunit aspect to it, and it's very pulled back. They don't go crazy. I mean, there is some gore compared to the stuff you were seeing at that time, and I mean that was one of the things about Halloween is it was very subtle, had not a lot of blood, and this one amped that up a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, I mean, this is only my second time seeing these movies, so I have to say I enjoyed the first one a lot more on the second watch, and I do. I think the whodunit aspect of the movie adds quite a bit. Once you strip that down, it's a little less interesting for me, honestly. You can definitely see the lack of budget there. I mean,
yeah,
there's not, and they don't necessarily need it, but the creative way that they film it with, you know, the POV shot stuff,
right.
And things like that, where you don't have to have everything on screen. You know, they spend money on a few different effects, and I think they manage it well. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and again, the first person aspect of it is not new. It was made pretty popular with Halloween, and that does carry the movie. For sure, is the first person going and you're wondering who this is that's following all these people around. That's one thing that we actually got out of this that wasn't part of Halloween is there was no mystery as to who this figure was walking around in a mask in Halloween. We knew who it was from the get-go, and the whodunit does put a little bit of a spin on it. And I like that you don't know who it is. Now, whether or not who we find out it is worth the payoff, I don't know. But
well, the amount of setup versus payoff, I think, is a conversation that we can have, because there isn't a ton of discussion about Jason in the first movie. Like,
yeah, it is very
it's kind of late in the film where you know, I mean, Miss Voorhees herself sort of explains everything at the end, but it would have been nice to get a little more on Jason earlier in the film.
Well, you really don't even see much of her until later.
You don't
Well,
see her.
and also some people forget. I think just general audience maybe forgets that the mother is the killer in the first movie, and we kind of think of that as a twist. But if you're thinking of this movie from watching it and no other films being made, it's not much of a twist, really. It's just this lady comes up and she's the killer.
It's your
So
traditional.
we're almost like retroactively reacting to it as a twist because we know the movies that come after it. But she is scary though. I think she's properly scary.
Yeah, she's creepy for sure.
Oh yeah, when she starts talking to herself and talking about Jason and today is his birthday, you just could see that look in her eye of like, there's something off about this lady. She's a little off her rocker. A couple of French fries short of a Happy Meal type thing going here. She ain't right.
Let's talk about the ha 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 stuff. I mean, that's
that going?
Nice.
How does that go again, Eric?
You only get one, Jason, but
It's actually
effective.
Kiki Mama.
Kiki Mama?
Kiki Mama is what it is. So that'll lead me into something I was talking about. There being a thread that runs through these movies that keeps them grounded with each other, and that's one thing I really want to point out is the score, because the score and Jason, what's his name?
Harry Manfredini.
Harry Manfredini. He continues to score the series up until I think part 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And his scores is really what makes the coming back to these movies feel familiar.
Yeah.
And what he did with them now. Much like the film itself, the score is a little bit of a ripoff of a few other things. And as a kid, when you're listening to this, you don't know it. You just hear this music. And honestly, even though they are pulling from different movies for this score, the score is still great and it drives the movies very well.
It's like how he come up with the sound.
Yeah.
Like that Eric was just talking about. And he just took those words and and he put it through like an echo box. I forgot. He actually had a name for it. It's an old piece of audio machinery, but and that's how he come up with it. And then it was like that noise is now synonymous with the rest of the series. Just that and anything going on, and even us as how many times did we walk around our house, Josh, making that noise or sneaking up on your friend and you go,
and it's like Jaws. When you hear that song, you know that Jason's around. He's around. He's somewhere.
He is the great white shark in this movie.
Yeah.
Wait for the music.
And it's funny that you bring Jaws up because it's completely ripping off John Williams. Because there are points in it where it's like it is.
Oh yes, there are straight up
straight up. Right. And I was like, now you're also talking Psycho, because there are definitely hints of the Psycho score in there.
Even the writing is from Psycho. He just flipped it.
Yeah.
It was the
mother instead of the son.
Yeah, they just flipped the whole mother-son aspect of the movie, and even the writer says that. He said, I just kind of took it and kind of flipped it. So yeah, there's a few things I did steal from other movies. I mean, they openly admitted it, but hey, that's what the way it goes. You just kind of make it your own.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were rehashing everything again, like at this time, because it was the bandwagon. They wanted to get on the train. And if they were throwing anything at the wall, and if it stuck, great. And that's Friday the 13th just ended up being one of those that stuck. Because you've also got New Year's Evil and Happy Birthday to Me, Prom Night, April Fool's Day,
Saturday the 14th.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
We could go on forever.
Yeah. But to get back to what you were saying about that, Eric, the composer took Betsy Palmer's talking as Jason, killer mommy. He took that and just put it through a processor, and he came up with the kick, and it's killer mommy, and it's kill mommy, kick mama. So
wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Me either.
That's pretty cool.
So I did.
Again, that's people like me and Josh who've watched these movies. We've watched the documentaries. We've watched the behind the scenes. We know these things.
Yeah, when they released a Blu-ray series a couple years back called Crystal Lake Memories, which it was a documentary that went into detail of every movie in the franchise, and I watched that for this just to get a little bit more background on what we were going to be.
It's a
talking
great
about.
watch. If you, anybody listening, that's if you just want to get some Jason knowledge.
Yeah.
Crystal Lake Memories. I think you can watch it on Shudder or something right now.
I also noticed that Tom Savini was on this first movie.
Yep.
Yes.
And the fourth as well. I later.
Yeah.
But
coming off of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. Love that guy.
And honestly, looking at the effects from Dawn of the Dead and moving into this one, it's a vast improvement. I don't get me wrong. I love Dawn of the Dead, but the effects were still being played with at that time for sure.
I feel like you can kind of see some of the same look, particularly, with the, like when Kevin Bacon gets an arrow through his neck.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ripping flesh, that kind of stuff. It feels Savini to me.
Mm-hmm.
There is such a thing.
It has a certain look to it.
Not that I'm some kind of expert on special effects, but it did remind me of that visually.
Yeah, so I mean, but the common story of this and moving it along is just kids at a camp. They're camp counselors. They're waiting. They're fixing this camp up, and all of a sudden, hell breaks loose because of something that happened. How many years ago was it? I think it was 15 years ago. It begins in late 50s.
Yeah, late 50s.
And then we're back in 81. So the stigma's gone. They're deciding to open the camp back up, and lo and behold, when they try to open the camp back up, murders start to happen.
So, I mean, basically, these things happen because these kids are drinking and doing drugs and having sex and, not things that wholesome camp counselors would do. People responsible for watching children. Now, there's no children yet, but one of my favorite part of any of these movies, it's early on when the counselors have gotten to the camp and they're all, spread out doing whatever, and a cop drives up to the camp, and he's really giving it to these kids, and he starts naming all these different slang terms for marijuana, and he ends it with grass, dig it. When he said that, I absolutely lost it.
The quote is weed. Or no, he asked the kids if they're smoking grass, and they're like, "What?" And he says, "Flamingo grass, the weed, dig it."
Dig it.
Yeah, this guy is definitely playing it up, and Jenny lost it when we were watching it. And made me stop the movie and rewind it so she could hear it again and write it down so that we could talk about it on the podcast.
So funny.
So
well, talking about the kids and being irresponsible, and you get punished in these movies for being irresponsible, for having, for drinking underage, for doing drugs, for having sex. That's where the sort of horror rules come from in, Scream and that kind of stuff, and they are incredibly irresponsible. Even these kids, they're up to no good.
They're okay up to a point, I noticed in this one, because
one dude shot an arrow
a
foot away from a girl.
And I'm going to talk about him. You have, each movie has their respective prankster, quote unquote. So you got to have your prankster of the group. And and Ted is the one, or I'm sorry, Ned is his name in this one. Yeah, he fires an arrow a foot away from a woman, and that's another aspect of this one that I think is really cool. Is again the whodunit aspect of it. I like the setup of the whodunit, and they're actually pointing at characters as they go through the movie.
Oh yeah,
to sort of make you try and guess who it's going to be, and that's why I think the ending doesn't work that well. Now, if we didn't have that ending, we wouldn't have the franchise. I get that, but
we needed to meet Mrs. Voorhees earlier.
Yes,
or at least heard more about Jason.
Right.
In conversation and stuff like that, so we fully understand what's going on. Another theme that's established in the first one that follows suit throughout is people are so stupid, and they are. I was thinking to myself, this would be because you have to understand that an older woman killed like all of these people.
Mhm.
And it's because they're so unsuspecting of anything. They are so
Very naive.
everyone trusts everything inherently. And I was just thinking it would be so easy to pick these kids off. You ring a little bell, one of them runs away, and you just clock them over the head with something. You ring a bell again, another one comes up, boink. But that's kind of part of the formula you're talking about is sort of unsuspecting fools getting dropped.
Like part one, when you get to the end of, like we're talking about, we don't even get Miss Voorhees or Betsy Palmer's character. Just it's like, here, we're going to shove the whole reason everybody's killed in 10 minutes, and then I'm going to chase the final girl around, and what's going to happen, and then you get to the end, the whole showdown at the end, and it's like, why couldn't we get a little bit of her earlier, just kind of showing up at the camp like, hey, how you doing, kids? I'm just checking to make sure everybody's okay, because it goes
Bring
back
some cookies over.
yeah,
Here's some
because
cookies.
it does go to like newer horror movies like Scream. That's how Friday 13th really started. That was everybody's a suspect. Let's keep pointing these people out.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, they're the killer. No, oh wait, this guy might be the killer, or this, but that's all they do. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, here's Miss Voorhees and her son drowned because people were too busy having sex and doing drugs, and now I've killed everybody because you let my son die, or did he die? But
I think
I
you're
will say, though-
giving this movie and these movies too much credit for plot. I mean, there's
yeah,
there's not one, and I don't think there's meant to be one. Like, I think the Mrs. Voorhees thing was about all they could come up with in terms of having a backstory, because nothing else is
Yeah.
Well,
well
they're
written or
they're
makes any sense.
They're in many ways a series of vignettes. Like it's like, okay, now here we are in this scene, and they're not a whole. There's some thin connective tissue, but it really is about like moment to moment, who's going to die, who's going to die, who's going to die. But I will say, like, I feel like the first one has a good climax when she reveals herself and they start fighting.
mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good fight.
Oh yeah, I think
Like-
what did they said that I think Betsy Palmer Miss Ford, she actually like really slapped her.
Yeah.
Because she was like a
she was slamming
Broadway
her head
type
in
thing.
the sand
Like she
and
actually
everything?
really slapped her. Oh no, we don't do that in movies.
Yeah.
It's not like you do on stage play. So I mean, she was really into that movie or that whole movie. I mean, it's like 80s, late 80s, action movies. They're like they're really hitting each other, and it's just two girls fighting over, I want to live and I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, they're throwing down for real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Betsy Palmer really was the only quote unquote star they could get in this movie. They
Yeah.
wanted to get someone that would be familiar to people of that time
Yeah.
to be their reveal. Now you've also got someone who our generation will see many more times, and this will kind of get us started on a new little segment we want to do here at the VHS Files called Almost Famous. And this is where us going back and watching all of these older movies and seeing some people's careers start and where they came from and where they went from here. We kind of want to call out some people in the movies that we're talking about, whether it's one or two or just one person that kind of made it famous. To kind of give you a little bit of a background, it's that guy. Who's that guy? Where's he? I've seen him before. We're looking for those kind of things,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of the nature of this one. And I think Kevin Bacon is your guy for that one, especially if we were watching this back in the 80s. I'm pretty sure I would have seen Footloose around the time I saw some of the Friday the 13th movies. So Kevin Bacon, even though this wasn't his first movie, movie technically
he
was
did
Animal House.
didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Animal House first, yeah.
But and then we get the end scene with Mrs. Voorhees getting her head chopped
Which is
off
a
of
great
her body.
effect.
Again, Tom Savini pulling that off.
I mean, that's the best effect in the film. I think that and what happens shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of the the boat.
Yeah.
I like the part where they've talked more. I mean, if you watch these movies, horror, I mean, of course, we all love Tom Savini as far as the horror genre goes and everything he's done. But I love that little piece when he's talking about when they molded her head and everything. Her head is actually held on with just toothpicks, and if when they do behead her, you can actually still see the toothpicks still sticking up, and the hand. But you see her grabbing it like that, and it's like his assistant's hands because you can see hair all up the back of the hands. These big old gorilla hands. You're like, that is the most non-feminine hands I've ever seen.
But
I was like, just those little things like that.
Yeah, and at the time, you would have never noticed that, especially being young.
Oh
and,
God, no.
Certainly not on VHS. Certainly,
right.
No.
There is so much to the VHS time period that is lost now because we've gotten so much better looking visuals, and they really had to rely on that when they were doing makeup effects and things of that nature.
Exactly.
So, but I mean, you brought up a good point about their lack of plot and where they were having to go with things. And in a sense, yes, and in a sense, no, because their formula they set up with this movie wrote them into a corner every time they had tried to go somewhere else. It was always going to be, well, we'll talk about the ending, the surprise ending that gets everyone. Again, there's a spoiler warning at the beginning of the show, but if you don't know, Jason's not dead. And we think our final girl is safe, and she's out in a boat in the middle of the lake waiting for the police to arrive. And when they do, young Jason jumps out of the water and grabs her.
And that is a classic image.
Yes.
You know, that moment is so classic.
And it's
in cinema.
Because they even set it up with the music. I mean, it's tranquil.
Yeah.
There's hardly a ripple on the water, and she's dipping her fingers in it. It's like the movie's over, it's peace, and then you know, just you know, the foreign-looking kid comes out of the water and just grabs her, and you're like, whoa, that did not totally. I mean, I'll admit the first time I actually saw this movie, which was years after it came out, yeah, that was terrifying. It's like you never want to go get in the canoe and go get in a lake ever again.
Yeah. And that shot holds up on HD as
yes,
well.
it does. It still holds up.
It looks scary as hell. What do you guys think about the final girl? Do you like Alice? Is it Alice?
Yep.
It's Alice, right?
I like her.
I like her too.
Why is she in the boat in the first place? Like, I've just survived the most terrifying night of my life, murdered somebody to keep them from murdering me. I'm just going to go out in the canoe for a little bit.
Well, I mean, the alternative would be running through the forest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Or running down the highway. I don't know. I mean, maybe she was just trying to wait for... But she also got her ass handed to her as well.
Yeah, and that's like an ongoing thing through these movies. What is it with the female survivors and canoes in the boat? Because it doesn't happen just this time.
Well,
what is it
that's
with
true.
them in the boat?
Well, with this one especially, I always read that as she got out into the middle of the lake to avoid someone being able to get to her quickly. Now,
no one can sneak up on her.
Yeah, no one can. Well, we think.
Unless they're super.
Well, except for like aquatic dead boys, you know, which you wouldn't plan for.
But and then the part I have with that is it is a dream sequence, because if Jason died all those years ago, he would be older than that. And then when we get into part 2 and stuff, he is a man and he's alive. He is not something that was living in the water. So that is really and truly is a dream sequence.
Well, and that's another thing that happens. These end of the movie sequences that end up getting kind of retconned at the beginning of the next film. And so, yeah, this one is, you know, there was a boy, da 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 da.
There was a man. There was a boy.
Yeah, but the next film takes place the next day or something, or
no,
actually 5 years later.
Yeah, part 2 is 5 years later.
Part 2 is 5 years later.
Part 2 it takes place 5. But on a small note, before we move on to part 2, the guy that plays Jason, Ari Lehman, I actually met him years ago. I worked at a theme park in South Florida. We did a whole Halloween horror night, things like Universal did. He came, he did an autograph signing, and you wouldn't believe it. You know, he was just the boy in the makeup. How many people come out just to see him because he did play a Jason in the movies? And I have an autograph picture of, but it was funny. He signs the picture of the hockey mask Jason, which I didn't get until later. But he'll write Ari Lehman, the first Jason, and then he'll say, "Thanks, Jason, for seeing me," or whatever. And I'm just like, but he's a really cool guy, and he does show up to all the things. But he was a really cool guy, and got to talk to him about, you know, like what we were doing right now. It's like, man, I love the Friday 13th movies.
Yeah. I
I know
haven't.
you run the movie for this long, but it was still a great and tragic scene to my memory. So it's very frightening.
I actually have a piece of original art of his. It's not really anything that impressive. He just kind of drew something at a con and signed it, and I got that and a hockey jersey that he signed with the number 13 on it. Another thing that while Jason's bringing that up is Jenny and I 13 is our lucky number, and Jenny and I were actually married on a Friday the 13th as well.
Hey, that's fun.
And Josh wore a Friday the 13th t-shirt under his tux
Yep.
the whole day. And then when we were like making our exit or whatever, he took off his
I unbuttoned my shirt.
Yeah, and you
in
could
some of
see
our
the Friday-
pictures,
yeah,
you could
Friday
see
the 13th.
the Friday the 13th, the hockey mask and stuff.
And we kind of did the same thing in my first marriage. Is I was wearing a Michael Myers shirt. He's wearing the Friday 13th shirt under his. So Friday 13th worked for them because I'm obviously divorced. So we tried to do I tried to steal some of their
Can't win
magic
them all, bro.
by getting married on Friday the 13th. It didn't work for me. It works for one couple, and that's the two of them. So that's their day and their number. Don't ever get married on that day. They already took it.
Took it. It's ruined now.
It's theirs.
So, I mean, from here we'll move into part 2.
Wait.
Well,
I have a question.
okay.
So Jason's been alive all this time, like living with his mother, or where is he? Because she thinks he's dead.
I think he literally just lived in the woods and never went back, and then he saw her
He's in
get
the woods,
beheaded that
Mom.
night. And I don't know, maybe he
Well,
was just scared to go
This
back.
goes back to Josh talking about how they wrote themselves into corners
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that's exactly right, and they don't address it because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're getting into part 2. Obviously, part 1 was a big hit, 60 million at the box office, and they were going to ride that train until they couldn't ride it anymore. So there was immediately a sequel put into place. The idea was to run with Jason being the killer. So this one, part 2, came out May 1st of 1981, and with a budget of 1.25 million, ended up doing 21 million at the box office. Again, I don't think this movie has a lot to offer, to be completely honest, but it was a success, and this is another reason why this franchise continued to go. And we're back again with Harry Manfredini's score leading us into the movie. That is your through with all of these for sure.
You guys watched more of these horror franchises than I did from the 80s. Did they all have recaps in the beginning that would like tell you what happened in the last movie or whatever?
There's a few of them that do because I guess they had recurring characters from the previous one, and sometimes there's one in between Halloween 4 and 5. They do a recap because it shows you how Michael happened to him. What else, Josh? There was a couple more.
No, I mean, honestly, Friday the 13th is more synonymous with that.
Yeah, I mean,
there were other
particularly
horror
the
movies.
second one. It is long, like it's like over 6 minutes long of a recap. Like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
But I think there are some good things in the second movie, particularly this beginning with Alice from the first film. I think the way they take her out early is unexpected, and
Yeah.
it's a nice surprise that when he pops up and just takes her out right in the beginning of the movie. That's good stuff.
Yeah. There's all kinds of problems with that, obviously. I mean, we don't know where she is. I doubt she lives. Maybe she lives not too far away from the camp, but he travels out that way just to stalk her down. I guess if you saw someone kill your mother, maybe you'd do the same thing. But I felt like it was a bit of a cheat for Alice because she lived through that first one, and then all of a sudden, boop, she's gone in this one. So I did
have a fear of ice picks now.
Yeah. And
I'm
apparently,
just thinking about something like Scream and how everyone loves the opening of Scream,
Yeah.
where Drew Barrymore gets,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's shocking, and it tells you that nobody's safe in the movie because we'll kill off our main girl.
But like you were saying with the flashbacks, this movie's not even an hour long once you take the flashbacks out of it. So they're really rehashing the formula pretty pretty well.
But this is 5 years later.
It's apparently 5 years after the first.
Because it seems like when Alice is in her apartment and she's, talking on the phone, like people are concerned about her. It seems like it's relatively soon.
Right.
That part is 2 months after. And then when we get to the camp is 5 years later.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you for clearing
Yes,
that.
Thank you
that's
for
what it
clearing
is.
up the
Yeah,
timeline.
she's still, that's the whole, Josh can get into that or about the whole timeline of these movies. It's crazy, especially after these ones we talk about, it goes all over the place. But yeah, the whole Alice thing is 2 months after he saw his mom beheaded, he goes and kills her. And then the next thing is back at the camp is 5 years later.
Yeah.
So I do believe, I think I'm right.
Well, there you have it.
Where's our stats guy? Can we get that checked?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll take your
Intern.
word for it.
Intern.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense because the guy telling the story at the campfire says she just disappeared 2 months later.
That's right.
There
I
you
remember
go.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in everything you read in the synopsises for this movie, it says 5 years after the events of part one.
Mm-hmm.
So now in this movie and we'll go into the third, I think they struck a deal with Volkswagen, or at least, or they got
through this whole series.
They got some deals on some Volkswagen Beetles because there's a lot of them. So we get our Volkswagen Beetle in this movie. We're introduced to all the counselors. These seem like they're a little more responsible camp counselors. Like they're there, they're getting ready, but and their whole thing kind of leads to, well, if you want to have one last night on the town, they go do that, and then hell ensues from there.
Yeah, like get it out of your system. Don't take it back to the camp before the kids get there.
So it seems like they're genuinely there to be camp counselors. But one thing I did want to say about the opening sequence with Alice is you see, what is supposed to be Jason walking through the town to go to kill Alice. That is the first and only time Jason has ever been portrayed by a female.
Yes.
It was a female that shot that scene. I don't have her name, but it was definitely a female that they used for that shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, because multiple people until later in the series, there was a different person playing Jason in every movie.
Yeah.
And sometimes multiple in one movie. If you had some heavy stunts, sometimes if the guy that they hired to play Jason wasn't a stunt person, they had to have a stunt guy do the stunts.
Yeah, and if the stunt guy couldn't act well enough to play Jason,
then they had
he could only do stunts.
You're not swinging that machete properly. We need an actor to swing this machete. That really wasn't that great of a swing. We need more believable out of that.
But with the first one and this one alike, and all of these as we go through, when we eventually get through all of these Friday the 13th movies, is the MPAA hacked these movies apart.
Oh yeah.
They shot so many death scenes and so many kills for these movies that ended up on the cutting room floor, and they had every intention of making them very, very, smart or as bloody as they could for entertainment's sake. And the MPAA was like, nope, you're getting an X if you put that on. So there is so many scenes on the cutting room floor from this series that we would probably just brush right off right now. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that we got away with back. It's even funny to me that they hacked it apart so much back then, considering we were seeing, naked women and F-bombs and blood and all kinds of stuff in PG-rated movies back in that time. Mm-hmm. These had to fight for R rating. It's just really, it makes you think that they really did have it out for the horror genre back at that time, which apparently they did. But you've got Jaws, tearing people apart, blood everywhere, that kind of stuff.
That's different because it's a giant shark that probably can't exist, but there can be a guy walking around with a machete hacking people up.
So there are scenes from this one that are very legendary in the series that were cut out, and they're releasing the whole series again on Blu-ray through Scream Factory, which I definitely want, because they finally found the footage from part 2 that they had to cut out, and they spliced it back in so you could look. So the spear scene, or the kebab scene that they call it, that was a lot more you saw a lot more of that, and it was a lot bloodier when when it happened, and
I
they
think
told him they had to cut
you
it.
could actually see it. They had it originally where you could actually see the spear going like into his back and then
Yeah.
coming through, and they had to cut pretty much the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the
it's cool.
process they had to go through to get this footage back was very, very interesting to read about, because the tape that they got, all the tape had melded together because it had been sitting in a box over time. So I read this whole article about how they had to save that footage, and they basically had to bake the film in an oven to loosen it, to separate it from itself. And surprisingly, they were able to save the majority of the footage out of that. It's crazy. If you can find that article online, I definitely would suggest reading it, because it's a very interesting process.
Gotta love science.
I find historical preservation and restoration fascinating.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
how do they even do that stuff?
So,
But it's also like in this movie. I mean, like at the beginning, they're having that whole conversation that, what was his name, Paul,
yeah,
the head counselor, the Eric's twin brother, and I still say he looks like Eric.
Interesting. I gotta look up.
I'm not kidding. I brought that up to Josh today. I said, why is it that this counselor reminds me of Eric? I don't know why. But they're sitting around the whole campfire thing, like you're telling ghost stories at the camp, and they bring up Jason. But that's really besides when Miss Voorhees had mentioned to Alice from the first movie about Jason. So the whole mythos through the town had grown to saying there's a guy out here, his name is Jason, and he still haunts these woods, and all the old people in town talk about him.
yeah.
And that's how I think that's really the first time we really get a whole thing about Jason still lurking in the woods. He didn't drown, that was all a mistake, but like I don't know if that's like Eric and Josh about retconning the story,
Yeah,
to go back
for sure.
Yeah, and you have guys like Ralph, the death
Crazy
curse guy,
Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
and the guy laying in the street, who claims that did Jason. That was weird. Claims that
Jason gave him the eyeball.
told him to warn them or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's part 3.
Yeah, that's part.
Well, that's part 3.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but Jason doesn't talk, right? So how do you? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's some good stuff in 2, and I like the main girl, and I forget her name because I always
Jenny.
do.
It's Jenny.
Her name in the movie is Jenny. Her name's Amy Steele.
Yeah.
Okay,
Amy Steele,
Jenny.
yeah.
I like how
Jenny.
Jenny
It's me.
kind of gets into the bar scene where she's talking about the psychology of Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of empathizing with his situation, trying to understand his motivations, that kind of stuff. That was interesting, and we don't get a lot of that in the other films. In
Right.
fact, I think she might be my favorite girl
I think there's
because she's
lot-
clever, and maybe they get into it later, but in these 5, but she's thinking critically where a lot of characters in these movies.
Well, I mean that ultimately saves her in the end of this one. She's
Right,
able
exactly.
to use what she sees for her benefit. Because and I always found that kind of weird once you get to the end of this one with the whole shrine set up and whatnot. Even as a kid, I knew what it was, but it seemed weird to me.
I love the shed. I love his shed. It's creepy inside. He's got like the altar,
So
with
cozy.
the sweater and the head sitting there. That is all effectively creepy, and
It's a
I like
sheath
the just the set design of all that, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, very creepy.
So,
And we can say that these movies were like the greatest PSA to not hitchhike ever, right?
Jenny brought that up when we were watching these movies, and there's a lot of things from back in that time that people were very just kind of willy-nilly on, and would people have no problem hitchhiking,
Lots
problem
of hitchhiking in old
Lots of
horror films and
hitchhiking.
stuff. Yeah,
lots of skinny dipping. People were not afraid to get naked in front of each other.
Nah, hey, what's up? Yeah.
There's I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but yeah, there is a lot that goes into these that you're really relying on. Oh, well, they're just stupid kids. They're naive. They're going to do this. And that's where they're going to end up in a bad situation.
Yeah,
Right.
Don't break the rules. no sex, no drugs.
But yeah, you say that Jenny's smart. I mean, she knows there's someone in the room when they go into the house, and
Oh yeah, that's
so,
right.
I mean, you are yearning for someone like that in these movies, or
Yeah.
I am anyway. When I watch them, I'm like, I want somebody to just stop for a minute and think about their situation.
Yeah. there is one that we'll get to that I think is a little bit.
There's
better,
another one
better
down the
than
line,
this
yes.
one.
You're right.
Yeah, Jenny definitely was the opposite of most final girls. I guess at that time it was like she was mentally prepared for this. Like she's already thinking, Jason is really probably out there. I need to be on cue. And like Josh just brought up, when they walk in that room, even when you're watching this movie, you see it in her eyes. Like she knows there is something wrong. Like something is off. And it's like, all right, this girl's on point. She knows what's going on. The next thing you know, Jason pops up, Mr. Baghead himself. And
I do like
Paul go after it.
I do like the Baghead look.
I do too. The Baghead, another great design choice in this movie. Like all the design stuff in this movie kind of looks unique and more, like the Crazy Man in the Woods stuff than the other movies.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I don't mind the Baghead. I still wasn't a big fan. My problem with the Baghead, well, for one thing, they kind of took the idea from The Town That Dreaded Sundown, because the killer, which that is actually kind of semi based on a true story of the Baghead guy, but he had two holes, not just the one hole, eye hole.
Yeah, but, Jason.
I guess he had a bad
eye.
Why
not two holes? Why not two holes?
He just had the one. But my problem with it
is, because he was kind of lopsided.
Yeah.
But my problem is, he's got the Baghead, but I mean, he is wearing a brand new pair of overalls and a nice flannel shirt. Like he just went down to Sears and picked it right up.
He picked it up at the Woolworths.
Yeah, something. And I'm like, this guy is living. I mean, he's obviously breaking in somewhere, but in this movie, I mean, he's wearing some nice clothes. And this is really the last time you actually see Jason wearing some decent clothes. The rest of the time, it's, tattered, ripped, blood soaked, whatever, rotting. But that was my problem. The Baghead was cool. It was just like, I think the wardrobe department kind of could have done a little.
Well, how how practical is the Baghead as well? Because you wouldn't be running around with that on your head and being able to see out of it.
Yeah,
they even say
they had to tape it or something.
They had to put double-faced tape around his eyes so it would stay there, so he'd be able to run while wearing it.
Well, that burlap you can kind of see through too, but just saying.
So
I'm sure for the actual cover, they wanted to use something thicker on the inside, So
all right, who played Jason this time? We can't. That's the thing. We have to at least mention the guys who played Jason, and who does it on this one. Is it? I think it was two guys that did Jason in this one.
I think there were two guys, but I did not write either of their names down.
Oh, okay, hold on. I think it was Warrington Gillette and then Steve Dash.
Yeah,
I think they're the guys who played Jason in this one.
And Jason isn't as big as he becomes in the future films in this one. He's more of like a regular sized dude in this one.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a question that I was thinking of. Do you think that Sloth from Goonies is
loosely
inspired
based
by Jason? A maybe possibly disabled child, abused, turns into a massive brute with a lopsided head.
Could be.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, by that time, Part 4 had been out, so Jason had gotten bigger in the movies, so it's definitely a possibility.
6 degrees of Jason Voorhees.
You don't know when somebody goes through trauma how they're going to react to it. Sometimes people have an awful childhood, and they, for whatever reason, something inside them, because of that, it makes them want to be a better person, right? And then some people are pulled down by that for whatever reason. That's your difference between Jason and Sloth. Sloth yearned to be good, and Jason does not.
This PSA brought to you by the VHS files. Be a sloth, not a Jason.
Yeah, don't be a Jason.
I take offense to that. Why is everybody picking on me?
So yeah, they I mean, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to bring up about Part 2, I'm done with it.
Well, just again, we end. Oh, Jason does too, but we end with another questionable sequence at the end, because she's
Yeah.
sitting there. They think that, and then Jason jumps in through the window.
Love the red herring with Muffin, the dog.
yeah,
That was
and
one
then
of the things I was going to bring
and then
up.
she
The
wakes up
dog
at the
survives.
hospital. And
Not even at the hospital. She's just on a
Oh, is it?
gurney at the camp. Yeah.
I'm trying. They're blending together, but yes, she asks where the guy is. Guy's
Paul.
apparently dead,
Yep. There's nothing
Yeah.
nothing alluding to where he is.
Well, that's
and
the-
we're left scratching our head again. What just happened?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what I was going to get is like, okay, well, it's the two of them in Jason's shed. He fights them. She supposedly kills him by putting the machete like straight through his shoulder, like down through
Yeah.
the collarbone, and he's dead. Well, they obviously say the bag. They see his face, but we don't see his face.
Yeah.
And then later they get back again with the peaceful music. Muffin, the dog that we had saw a dog earlier in the movie, totally
Yeah.
ripped apart. It looked just like Muffin. Well, Muffin comes through the door, and then this really crazy looking guy, and it's Jason because he's wearing his Sears and Roebuck overalls, coming through the window. The crazy hair, the deformed face, and everything.
Yeah, he's a
like
mountain
that.
man. Yeah,
Yeah, he's huge, and then as they put her on the gurney to put her in there, she's asking about Paul, but Paul was there. So again, do we have another dream sequence?
Absolutely,
is-
we do, because we have to
Yeah.
get to another movie somehow.
Exactly, because they're always all right, these movies are making money, and we roll into the next one. And that when we get to part 3, that deals with what's happening here in part 2. I have a problem with in part 3.
It's like Wayne's World.
Get
You
to
got
that.
the
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo ending.
You're not kidding. That's basically what they have to rely on as far as moving forward with these.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, what happened to Paul? Paul just
You think
disappeared.
Paul just like moved and went home and he's fine?
what he
That's what I want to
said?
think.
I mean, because
Did
he
they
was
say?
he was trying to hook up with Jenny again, and he said, "Hey, this ain't happening. I'm out of here. I'm moving back to the city. Screw
He had a
this."
job opportunity, something else,
I'm
getting a
out,
different field.
Yeah, he found that this new company was starting. Apple hopped on that wagon, moved on.
New
with
starter
life.
company called Apple.
Apple, yeah, the starter
Yeah.
company. He moved on. But all right, Josh, take us on to the next one.
And so that one ends on again, they wrote themselves into a corner with the cliffhangers. So from this point forward, we're going to get the cliffhanger on every one, most of them anyway. And then we move on to, again, the part 2 was very successful, 21 million in the box office. So again, get another sequel out there. Part 3 and I'm gonna go ahead and say 3, 4, and 5 all had a budget of $2.2 million. $2.2 million for all.
This is all
3
you're
of those.
getting.
Yeah, and they were making money. They were not flops. So, but they would not increase the budget for these people. They were like, nope, that's why we're making money, is because you're making them super cheap, and we're getting a lot of money in the box office.
Not even for 3D.
Right, not even for 3D.
You have to do 3D now, but your budget's not going
$2.2 million
support that.
And
So get to work with your rubber snake.
But again,
oh God.
so this one did well at the box office as well. 36 million at the box office. It did better than the second one did, and it picks up right where part 2 ends. It is literally the next day.
That's where I was
we
getting
pick up.
mixed up. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, now
This
we're
is where we
day-to-day.
get the continuity of where these next couple movies actually take place over a period
Right.
of just a couple of days.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And then after that, the rest of the series continuity gone.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely be talking about the continuity of this series moving forward, even into the ones we'll talk about later down the road. So this was the one that always stuck out in my mind and the one that I watched the most. Obviously, because it's the one where he gets the hockey mask. He essentially becomes the Jason we all know and love, quote unquote, from this point forward. And this is the one that I always watched the most, this and part 4. Because it was where this incarnation of Jason started, and where they evolved it from here was only minute changes, but you still had they knew where they were going with that character from that point forward. But
Yeah, and he looks more like the boy from the first movie.
yes,
Yeah, he does.
At least
Yes.
with the bald and like the patchy hair and that, like disfigurement, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The look of him fits more with the first movie than the second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now that we moved into the third one, about the whole, since we're talking about looks, because I said earlier in the movie, part 3 was the first time I'd seen a Friday 13th movie. That was the whole sneaking out, watching it behind your parents over the couch.
Yeah.
But the one later when I actually saw part 2 and I saw the way he looked when he come through, and then of course for when we do these podcasts, we all go back and we get a refresher, even though I've probably seen part 3 more times than I could count. And you start looking, but when, like you said, this all takes place basically the same day, right after Jason's, and he's wandering around. He comes up to the little shack where the two people live, and you see Jason. All right, now we saw Jason again, burly mountain man, right? Okay. Well, we see Jason standing in the laundry, and he's obviously needing a new shirt because he got, she hacked him through it, so he messed up his brand new Sears and Roebuck shirt. And he still, but first thing we look at is Jason now has no hair, completely shaven, just it's like I guess he stopped and said, "Man, can you take this shit out of me? And I need a shave." He bicked it. He got tired of the mountain man look.
Maybe it's like The Fugitive, like he's a fugitive. He wants to change his look up.
Yeah, you got to change his look a little bit. Hey, I need a new
shave the
shirt.
hair.
Shave all my hair.
What it was is he was like, these girls don't find me sexy in my burlap sack and my overalls and my flannel shirt. I'm going full tilt. Just shave it all off. This is my new identity.
They like athletes,
He stopped at the barber shop on the way to this convenience store, and he was hungry. He wanted some food, and he just found some clothes on a clothesline and decided to take them and put them on.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but I'm not eating any food out of that little store because that guy walks through and he has a buffet. Here's a donut. Here's some peanuts. Puts the lid right back.
He licked something.
He's eating the fish food.
He ate fish food for one.
Yeah.
And then he drinks the orange juice as well and closes it back up.
Yeah, it puts it all back. And then there's a rabbit hopping around in the vegetables and everything. Was like if I was, I don't know, Jason's probably eating dogs or whatever like that, but I think I'd even draw a line at me. Dude, this guy just drank the orange juice and put it back. I'm like, come on, what are you, a madman? Are you a psycho? So.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be watching his diet too.
Yeah,
cutting back on the junk food.
Well,
doctor said
this couple is a match made in heaven. I have to say, this woman is a complete is fed up with this guy. It's like, why are you even with this dude? He doesn't care about himself. She's just completely nagging on him the whole time. That's exactly what I said to Jenny when we were watching. I said, this is a 5-star couple right here.
Yep, they were meant
Classic.
to be together.
Mm-hmm.
But
she nags because she cares.
But then we find out why the rabbit was loose. And then that leads us to something Eric just
rubber snake.
But
it's not the fact that it's a rubber snake. When they do the whole 3D gimmicks, you can actually see the
string,
fishing line, whatever, wrapped around it, pulling it toward the camera. And I'm like, oh my god! Look, I didn't see that as a kid. It's something definitely you see as you're an adult and you see things on not even VHS. I don't know. You probably could have saw it on VHS. I think I did.
It's pretty egregious, yeah.
DVD and then Blu-ray. It really gets worse. It does not hold up over time.
We were talking about the 3D in this, and this was one of the first times they really shot with the 3D cameras. The crew was so miserable when they were trying to shoot this because every shot they had to set up was directed to where things had to be in camera and it had to be just right, or they couldn't use the takes. So if you go back and listen to interviews with the cast and whatnot from when they're shooting this, they said it was horrible because they were so worried. Like it came down to to the nudity in the movie. They were like, oh, well, if the nipple can't be in the shot sticking out, then we're not going to do it. They were that. Yeah, like they were crazy about how the 3D needed to be in this. So
do you need some ice
for all the for all the 3D shots? Nipples did not cross my mind when I was watching this, but yeah, I guess maybe that was there. Of course, I've never seen this in 3D. So,
well, the set that I have came with the ability to watch it in 3D and gave us 3D glasses.
Oh, that's fun.
I turned it on and watched it, and it's not very good.
Yeah, and you could tell
we've seen such better 3D since then, so it's hard.
And you gotta love the gimmicks, like the handle of something up there, the baseball bat, the snake, and then
the yo-yo,
even the wallet when he throws the wallet. He's trying to get those 3D shots because There was one thing, I think it was the yo-yo. They were actually trying to do like ping pong, but they couldn't get the ball to bounce right at the camera.
Yeah.
So they had to change. All right, we're going to do something different. We can't get the ping pong.
That's when they went to the juggling.
Well,
Yeah,
they're very
that's it. Juggling, yes.
They're very shoehorned in too. It's just like, why does this guy have a yo-yo? Why are we focused on this yo-yo? But they're trying to get more gags in there. I mean, that fits in with talking about the tone of these movies and that they're not really meant to be taken super seriously. You know,
fun.
Just putting the gimmick of a 3D on there is just about thrills and chills and fun and movies and whatever, and that's great.
I think the most realistic part of the opening part where he sees the snake is that he has to run because he basically just shit himself because a rattlesnake dumped in his face. Yeah. That's probably some of the best acting through a lot of these movies. Is how he really
I'd shit myself.
I could attest.
I would have shit right there in your face. I'm going.
Absolutely.
So we move on to the next group at the camp, and I was always a little confused by this as a kid. But it's just a house. It's not camp counselors, and the lake looks nothing like the lake looked in the past two movies. It's overgrown with oak trees and it's just not the same area at all.
Dude,
well, they're not at a camp, right? So
right.
Yeah. Well, the lake is huge. That's all I'm thinking. This thing is miles wide because of all. Because we're, like I said, we're going to talk about this movie takes place. These next few movies take place over a couple of days. And why were people not knowing what was going on? Oh, it's on the other side of the lake. We haven't gotten the paper yet. We don't know.
They didn't have the 24-hour news cycle back then.
Exactly.
Right. I'm just saying this particular place does not look like any other setting that we're going to go to in the next couple of movies.
What do you feel like? What do you feel about the gang this time?
The motorcycle gang, or just the gang?
No, just the kids.
No, poor choice of words.
Yeah.
You mean the motorcycle gang that drove out of the Beat It video into this movie?
Yeah.
No, I should have said gang. Yeah, the kids.
Yeah, the kids.
Because we have Shelley to thank for
our resident prankster.
For Shelley, I like Shelley. I really like Shelley.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the prankster in part 2, which I guess would have been the guy who ended up in the bear trap in the middle of the woods, or that was sexually harassing the girl and stealing her clothes, and whatnot.
Oh yeah, was he the prankster or was Ted the prankster?
Well, Ted was the prankster. Well, I said it was
it
Ned in part 1. It was Ted. Okay, so yeah, Ted would have been the prank, and surprisingly enough, Ted made it out of the movie. In part 2,
yeah, because they left him at the bar.
They left him at the bar.
Oh man,
yeah, they left. Dude, you see all those beer bottles? He wasn't driving home. He stayed there. His alcoholism saved his life.
Yeah, he stayed with the bartender that night.
And I'm not by any way condoning to go get shit faced drunk every time you're camp counseling, because there's a possibility there's a mass killer and you could survive if you just drink yourself into oblivion. But no. But that worked for him. He survived, but we never hear from him again. Like Paul, he disappears.
That's what it is. Ted and Paul ran away together.
That's what it is. Because they did work together before, because he was like his right-hand man.
But this time we're not at a camp. We're at like a little lake house with a barn and whatnot. And our main character has had some sort of episode that has happened to her out here, and that's why she's not been back. And this is something I found kind of interesting that they went into, and this one is Jason apparently likes to sexually assault girls as well as not just kill them.
Is that implied though? I mean, he jumps on her and stuff, but like it
kind of is implied, but you really don't know the story.
I guess you could say it's implied, but at no point is it outright said that he is sexually assaulting her. She doesn't say that, right? She just says he grabs her, and we get a flashback, don't we?
A very brief flashback.
And he does jump on her in a fashion that would maybe make you think that. I just don't know. Like, is he capable of that? I see him as sort of like this simple child man.
Yeah. And that happened go ahead. Sorry.
Well, also the fact that he seems to kill people who are sexually active because he's probably asexual or hates. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of Michael Myers-y in that regard too, right? Just sort of like a child that does not like teenage girls or whatever, or young people.
Yeah, because what happened to her, I think that was 2 years prior. Like, it took her 2 years to come back because what is the guy in this one? that she's crushing, and I forgot his name.
She's not
Shit.
too interested in him,
I
right?
forgot what his name was.
Rick is his name.
Rick, yeah, because he's all like, "Hey, let's pick up where we left off," type thing, and again, a Volkswagen,
Yep, the Volkswagen.
another
Shelley's
Volkswagen,
driving.
and because they're out in the woods talking about it, and that's when she goes into the whole thing where he had attacked her and everything. But yeah, it's just implied. You really don't know, and I don't know if, like you said, like Eric brought, like, why would he even want to do that? Because it's almost like something that drives him to kill these kids is because it's something that's.
He
like,
doesn't seem sexually driven.
No,
No.
it just
In
sounds
any
like-
way to me.
But
In
she
my
survived.
brain, he didn't. Yeah, in my brain, he was just probably trying to kill her, but that's just me.
I just think
That's
that the
how I read it.
writers implied it, but I don't think that's what happened.
Well, you've got the sexual repression with her and Rick because, like, he seems like he's all for it, and she's like, I just want to slow it down. I want to
true.
take things
It's true.
slow. So maybe that's where I get that from. But
That's
I mean,
fair.
That's why she feels the way she feels about it. So, but
Maybe
yeah,
so.
we get our Volkswagen Beetle in this one, and I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say. I mean, there are some good kills in this one for sure. And
Well, speaking of the 3D, there's the 3D eyeball pop, which is nice.
yeah.
Oh
that-
yeah,
Rick,
when he
Rick
gets
is
killed.
head squished.
That is actually a pretty neat little thing
Yeah.
too, because she's standing right there. That's a pretty good shot.
Well, and that's also where we get our introduction to Jason having this just like brute strength to where he could just pick a dude up and crush
Yeah,
his
he's
head with
huge
his
in
bare
this
hands.
movie.
Skull.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the
Yeah,
Incredible
because-
Hulk.
Yeah, because he's a pretty good sized guy, and he's literally picking him up by his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that addition, making him. I like the visceral aspect of him just crushing, killing with his bare hands.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes him a little scarier than somebody with a knife or a
Right.
machete or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
I
nice
think
that he gets his hands dirty sometimes.
I just think the sad part of this whole movie is the fact that Shelley died. He gave us the mask that is now an iconic thing in all of movie history, and he
Yep.
didn't even survive the movie. And I like Shelley in this. I mean, he was the prankster guy. He was the special effects guy. He even had some cool of his own, like the axe in the head and
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
I mean,
did
he
good.
played some pretty dumbass pranks on these kids.
Yeah, he did good.
Insensitive.
Yeah,
But
some of
and it's not our first time seeing a character that's into special effects, which is a little
Yes.
strange. But
But the thing is like you saw Shelley leave, because the girl that he was trying to hook up with, he he thinks the best way to get to her heart is to scare her to death and give her a heart attack. Is this the whole thing that we've talked about this before, Jenny? Like if a guy likes you, he's mean to you, but this one she's really trying to scare her to death through the
Yeah,
whole.
that's like a more extreme version of he's mean to you. He's gonna scare you to death.
Sweetheart, if he dresses up with a hockey mask and he chases you with an axe, that means he likes you.
That's how Josh got you, right? Hockey mask, machete, oh, I'm in love. It's total. But the thing is he disappears, and then they see, do we get the first iconic scene? Like the thing is like now we go back and you're like, this is the first time you see Jason with a hockey mask.
Yeah.
And he just walks out. He has the hockey mask and the spear gun. What happened to Shelley? Because usually it always shows
Yeah.
he kills and then he moves on. But we didn't see that happen. So
This one is where they. I don't really think they did. Well, they kind of do with Paul's character in part 2, but this is where they also start doing this, where they allude to people's deaths and don't show them.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
and yeah, things start happening off screen more.
yeah.
You'll see somebody scream, and then you don't see him again.
Yeah, like
Or-
Shelley shows up later at the doorway, and again they're thinking, "Oh, you're screwing with us again. That's
Yeah.
good makeup." Until she touches, he's like, poof, he falls
Yep.
over. Oh crap, he's dead. Yeah. But hey, we out of all this, we thank Shelley for giving us the hockey mask.
Yeah, part 3 gave us the hockey mask. So
Did
thanks for
anybody
that.
find the stoner couple like sort of like? It seemed like they were much older than the other kids.
Yes,
They
seem
were.
It was like,
definitely.
why are these people here? I mean, obviously so they could have some weed, I guess, but I always remembered that as a kid. Is like, why are they hanging out with these old people?
Yeah, that guy looked like Tommy Chong now.
Yeah.
He was old, gray hair.
Yeah, I slept in a ditch last night, man. I almost froze my balls off.
But the thing is, at the end of the movie, I guess because of Chris's previous run-in with Jason, and then of course the whole running around and chasing, like again, it's the same thing again. Girl running away from Jason type thing, and she survives, and she just freaking loses it, dude. Like last straw, mine's broken. I'm in a loony bin. Put me in a straitjacket as they're taking her out in the cop car.
I feel like she's definitely the most hysterical girl that we get in these 5 movies. Like when she screams, it, once things start happening, it's like she's totally lost it.
Yeah.
Well,
and you get another dream sequence there too
with the now this time with Jason's mom, who has her head back on her body and is a zombie.
Really good makeup though. I mean, it was cool with
the worms and stuff.
Yeah, the
coming off of her
worms,
head.
man, that was really cool.
I think where they were aiming with Chris's character in that one is she's already had this trauma that she wouldn't come back to the lake for. She goes through another trauma just to find out that it is the same person that attacked her when she was there before. I can kind of see where they went with that.
Yeah.
And we all forgot one thing. We get the iconic scar in the hockey mask in this one too.
Oh, that's
with
right.
the axe to the head.
axe hits the mask. Yeah.
Because that's the part where she thinks she kills him, and she takes the mask off. It brings up to what Josh said. She realizes it's the same guy.
Yeah.
Right.
When he takes his mask off.
No, I always really loved that was the way they dispatched Jason in this one, and I think it's pretty effective. I like that, she gives him the axe to the head, but he still continues to come for that brief moment. You think, oh my God, like who is this guy?
The hands with those jagged fingernails that are like 2 inches long.
No, that doesn't happen until 4. Actually.
Right, he doesn't get the nasty fingers till 4.
Oh no, you can see him through this a couple times. He's got some dirt in there, some hammered freaking like he's got.
He does have like a real bruise under his hand.
There's one. I think it was in part. Is it part 2?
On the thumb.
What he said. He's got his thumb. But yeah, you see the griminess under his fingernail. But yeah, part 4, it's really getting ugly. But yeah, it's just. But you get the iconic. Maybe you get the hockey mask, and then you get the iconic scar that they kind of stay with through the rest of the movies.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny they the things they chose to stick with through most of these are some of the weirdest decisions. It's like, okay, Jason's definitely not the same person he was in part 2, but we're gonna make sure we keep this little slit in his mask through the rest of the movies, But
it's like, we don't care about the stories and the timelines lining up. Long as that little scar is in the mask,
that's the only continuity we care about.
Continuity.
Continuity.
Cock and nudity. What? Because I don't.
There's
think
some
it's really
serious
fair.
Continuity in these films.
Because I mean, it's really not fair to the female viewers that most of the nudity in this movie is all female. So, but I mean, I never complained about it as a teenager. So that's why most people watch these movies is the amount of nudity throughout the movies.
There are no women who are just out there naked all the time. Like let's go skinny dipping and I don't care who sees me. That's just not a thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people I know, like you guys who saw these when you were a kid and love them from that point, I can see why a prepubescent kid would like these movies. It's everything a kid's not supposed to see. Topless women, gore, blood, language, drugs, all that kind of stuff. It's not even
topless; it is full nudity.
Oh yeah, at times, yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
I think I kind of cracked up when you have the moment with Tommy in 4. Which we haven't gotten to yet, but he's peeking at the girl in the other house and he's going nuts, and it's like that's boys watching these movies right there,
So I mean, I have an affinity for part 3 just because it is the first one where you see him with the hockey mask, but watching them years later and as many times as I have now, I do see that part 3 does not have a whole lot of value to it, other than the fact that it births the icon that is Jason as we know it. But it's very bland. I mean, it does have some good creative kills in it. I like the actor that plays Jason. I like the way they went with him as far as this goes, but that's really about all that I'm really getting out of part 3 nowadays. So,
And I think Richard Brooke did Jason in this one.
yeah. So we'll get to part 4 here in a minute. That's actually got my favorite guy who
Yay!
played Jason. So, but we'll move on to part 4 unless anybody's got anything else.
No, I'm good.
Jenny surprisingly has a lot to say.
God, would she stop talking?